Story 1. I am an attorney and politely declined a vehicle search in Maryland. Backup arrived. I was never told why I was pulled over, nor did I ask. After declining the search, they brought the police dog, which inevitably hit after I saw the officer give the dog the signal by tapping on the door 3 times. Of course, they tore my car apart and found absolutely nothing, as I do not do drugs, drink, or take any medications beyond the occasional multivitamin. I am in law enforcement and know that many police officers train in a backdoor signal to drug dogs that manufacture probable cause to search. They might tap a couple of times or say a code word, and the dog will hit whenever they do. Nothing ever came of the stop after 6 cruisers, 8 officers, and a police dog, all because I refused a search and politely refused to answer any questions. After the stop was over, I was issued a warning for 37 in a 35. I also made sure to alert the officer handling the dog that the dog's false positive needs to be added to the dog's report, as it is discoverable evidence the next time he secures an arrest. He did not like that. Story 2. Back in 2001, I was 17 years old and picked up my buddy from work at 11 p.m. on a Friday. He was also 17 years old. I was waiting in front of the grocery store where he worked. He ran out of the store acting foolishly and got in my truck. There was a police car behind me. The police car followed me out of the parking lot and immediately pulled me over. The officer asked if he could search my truck. My truck was a tiny 2-seater. If we had stolen anything, there was no place to hide it. I asked for what reason. He just asked to search it again, and I said no. He could see that my buddy was still wearing his work clothes. The officer came back and gave me a ticket for having a clear license plate cover, which was legal at the time, but said it was cloudy and obstructing my plate, obviously looking for something to punish me for. I pleaded not guilty to the ticket and requested a trial. I went to the initial hearing, told the judge the story, and showed the judge the cover, proving that it was clear. The judge just asked me to leave it uninstalled and threw out the ticket. Story 3. The one time I've declined, it went like this. The police officer said, "Why does your vehicle smell like marijuana?" I replied, "I wasn't aware it did." The officer asked, "May I search your vehicle?" I said, "No." The officer then said, "Okay, have a nice day." This was a one-time occurrence. Before that, I was not wise and let them search my car. That was the last time I've been pulled over, so I'll see what happens next time. Story 4. I refused to give consent to having my car searched. I was then asked to get out of my car and take a field sobriety test. I declined and insisted that I be given a blood test instead. I was taken to the emergency room while my car was impounded. My blood alcohol level was determined to be 0.0 because I had not been drinking. I was still expected to pay to get my vehicle out of impound, where it had been searched for safety reasons. Nothing illegal was found, of course. Not only did I refuse to pay, but the damage done to the car in their search was extensive. They didn't search the car in the impound lot. They just vandalized it extensively, including ripping up the carpet, shredding the car seat's vinyl and stuffing, smashing windows, and ripping off door panels and poking holes in the gas tank. I sued in court over this whole thing, and since the police officer who initially pulled me over kept lying to the judge about his reasons, and getting caught in those lies since he thought he had turned off the dashboard camera in his car, he assumed that he couldn't be heard or seen when he and the other officers he called to the scene conspired to penalize me for refusing the search. I won. I won so much I was able to get an even nicer car on the taxpayer's dime. Nothing, of course, happened to the police officer who fabricated the whole situation. Story 5. Car smelled like weed because my dumbass friend brought his packed pipe and stuck it in the glove box. Calmly refused the search. Cop said that was fine, but now he was going to call the dogs to come have a sniff. Made us sit and sweat for about 20 minutes, then walked up, said I was lucky, and he had been called away somewhere else and to not drive stoned. Story 6. I just told him no, I'm not consenting to a search. The police officer brought a police dog in to sniff the outside of the vehicle. No idea why, because I was only pulled over for an expired inspection sticker. He seemed a bit irritated when nothing was found and wrote me a ticket for the sticker. He could have written the ticket at the beginning and saved us both an hour. Edited to add. For those saying I should sue or file a complaint, This was at least 20 years ago. I'm not gonna sweat that. Story 7. I've said no twice. The first time, the officer kept asking questions and stalling. Then a canine unit showed up and walked around the car. Then he let me go without searching. The second time, the officer just said okay and let me go without any follow-up. Story 8. K9 officer walks his dog around my car after I said he did not have permission to search following a broken taillight stop. The dog alerts. I ask him how he knows. He says the dog is specially trained. He searches my car, finds nothing, but suggests that someone definitely smoked weed in the car, which they didn't. My favorite part of that stop is that my car was extremely messy, so he had to sift through everything just to find nothing. Story 9. In 2013, my wife pulled over to the side of the road so we could switch drivers. 2 police officers rolled up behind us. After starting to ask me questions, one went to the other side of the van and just opened the rear door. There was no probable cause, no consent, or even bothering to ask for it. When I noticed, I verbally objected. I was hit with 2 false charges. I did my homework and represented myself. At the pretrial hearing, the prosecutor tried to add more charges when I refused to share discovery with him and called in the chief of police. It got pretty tense. I then got a lecture from the prosecutor that spiraled into the bizarre. I got everything on video, both the stop and the court nonsense. I put together a YouTube video about it all and knocked it out of the park. All hell broke loose after the news sites started reporting on it. They fired their city attorney for it. And I like to think I had a part in their city council cleaning out their police department. My favorite accolade was from a Myrtle Beach attorney's blog entry with the title, "Don't represent yourself in court, unless you're this guy." Story 10. Context from Montana driving through Minnesota in my wife's Subaru Impreza WRX. Police, mirror tinting is illegal. I'm gonna need to search your car since I can't see into it. Me, sir, if you take a closer look, you'll see that it's not mirrored. It starts dark at the bottom and turns blue from the middle to the top. You should be able to see in. Police checks, then walks around and comes back. Police, looks like you have an illegally modified exhaust. Me, sir, that's the stock exhaust on a Subaru Impreza WRX, and it's completely legal in Montana. Police, why are you in Minnesota? Me, visiting family. Police, you're free to go. Me, you don't need my license and registration? Police, just go. Story 11. They made me wait while more and more. They told me they needed to search. I told them I needed a warrant. They told me a drug dog is in the area. I told them okay. They told me they smelled marijuana. I told him he's full of it. They told me they smelled alcohol. I told him he is still full of it. After 20 minutes, they let me go. Multiple police officers stopped by, but none would do anything. I sat there in my car with my hands on the wheel. Story 12. At a DUI checkpoint, an officer asked to search my car. I made it perfectly clear that I do not consent to searches. So the officer claimed to smell weed coming from my car, and that magically gave him probable cause to search. I haven't smoked weed in over 10 years, and my car has never had weed inside, smoke or otherwise. It seems cops are using the "I smell weed" excuse to circumvent search and seizure laws. Since so many asked about the outcome, the cops searched my car, found nothing, and sent me on my way. Story 13. Pulled over for not turning my lights on in a parking lot. I realized they were off and turned them on before getting to the road. The police officer asked if I had been drinking, to which I replied no. He asked if I had any open containers, to which I said no, and I stated I didn't consent to a search when he asked if I minded if he checked. He then informed me that turning your lights on late was a sign of being drunk, so he really needed to check. I said that I had already responded that I hadn't, and I still wasn't consenting to a search. He then became upset, claiming he was just going to give me a warning until I started getting all unfriendly with him. I told him that I agreed that I turned my lights on fairly late, but he was effectively calling me a liar to my face, so unless he had reasonable suspicion and I was being detained, I'd be happy to take my ticket and move on. He cut me off just before the end of it and said I was free to go. It's sort of like a game to them, but if you're saying enough of the right words, They have to decide if they have anything better to do that night or not. Luckily for me, it seemed there were other things for him to do. Story 14. I got searched anyway. For your information, when this happens, just state your refusal to give consent and don't answer any questions without a lawyer present. They can lie and manipulate you into giving consent. Sure, they'll probably search your car anyway, but the time to fight that is in court. Officer, I do not consent to a search of my person or vehicle. Am I being detained? The last bit is kind of a meme, but it's an important question to ask. If you can record the interaction. I have a dash cam that's meant for rideshare drivers, but after my experience with the police, I have it angled so it can record me and my interactions at a traffic stop. Story 15. Got pulled over for speeding near the end of a long road trip. The police officer wanted to search my car. I asked why. He said that there was some stuff around the dashboard that looked like I had opened up a bag of marijuana and it had spilled. It was one of those stupid granola bars that spills crumbs everywhere. Then he pointed to dried grass between the driver's seat and the door. I explained that this was indeed dried grass, the lawn kind. He then told me about this other kid he had recently stopped. He had told him that if he had a pipe or something, he could just chuck it across the road and see how far it went, but that he wasn't interested in paraphernalia. I thought that a police officer encouraging me to destroy evidence and couldn't tell granola crumbs from marijuana was probably not very trustworthy. He asked me what my problem with having him search my car was. I told him I had a Fourth Amendment problem against unreasonable searches and seizures. On hearing that, he lost his jovial side, told me that he had a canine unit in his vehicle and that he was allowed to have the dog inspect the outside of the car, and if he detected anything, they would impound my car. I said that was fine as long as the dog wasn't hungry for granola. He ordered the dog around in German, occasionally telling her in English to find the drugs, girl. She did not find any drugs. The police officer wrote me up for the ticket, plus an expired inspection sticker. I called the town hall later and spoke with the prosecutor, who agreed to knock the charges back to a 2-point violation of parking on the sidewalk, which was about $400 cheaper and much less impactful on my insurance. I didn't have any drugs in the car, which made it easier to stand my ground, but that was intense. Story 16. A lawyer on YouTube just revealed that the police won't necessarily ask to search your car, but they'll say things like, I see something odd in your back seat. Can I take a look at that? For officer, you have a tail light out. Pop your trunk and let me see if it's a wiring issue. No, officer. You're not a qualified mechanic and maybe not even a good electrician. So I'll get that looked at by my guy. Story 17. Got pulled over at 1 a.m. after dropping off my brother and his friend from the airport. In a shady part of town, I pulled in and pulled out. To the police officer, I'm sure it looked like a drug deal. The police officer said my license plate light was out, and asked me what I was doing. I told him I picked up my brother and his friend from the airport and dropped them off. Then he asked me what all the stuff in my back seat was and if he could have a look. I said, it's dirty work clothes and McDonald's bags. It's 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I want to go home. So no, you can't have a look. He just shrugged and ran my information, letting me off with a warning. Story 18. I was sent on my way with a warning. A friend and I were leaving a New Year's Eve party and got pulled over. The officer asked if we had been drinking. I hadn't and was driving. He then asked if he could search the car for any open containers of alcohol, which I declined. He then said I had been swerving and to pay better attention. I wasn't swerving. My girlfriend's mom was a traffic court judge and told me this was most likely an attempt to get the first arrest or ticket of the year and win an office pool. Since I wasn't obviously doing anything, he didn't want to waste his time and sent me on my way. Story 19. I was at a gaming party with my colleague brothers. Played Call of Duty until 2 a.m. Went to drive home and I saw a police officer outside the house I was hanging out at. As soon as I left, he followed me and pulled me over. I asked why I was being pulled over as I barely got to even leave the driveway. He told me he ran my license plate and that the vehicle was stolen. It turns out he never ran my license plate, just wanted to check if I was drinking. I was very upset to be pulled over for a false cause. Told him the only thing I had to drink was Mountain Dew and Monster Energy. Story 20. Happened to my slightly disabled son. He stopped to make a phone call in another town and just happened to stop in front of a known drug house. He remembered what I told him. No, I do not consent to any searches of my car. It was a warm night. Windows of the car were open. They brought a drug dog by. The dog proceeded to jump into the car through the open passenger window. Illegal search. Goodbye. Instead, they cited him for 4 traffic violations. My best friend, the lawyer, came to court and beat all but one charge. The remaining charge was a broken taillight, and that was my wife's fault. It was her car he was driving. So we paid it, and he was off the hook except for buying my lawyer friend lunch.